Hey, welcome back to the Football Diary podcast. Wow. That's all I can say. The World Cup final has happened and it was an absolutely breathless occasion. The game, obviously, as you know, you've all seen it, finished 3-3, 4-2 on penalties to Argentina, who are now the world champions. A game that had literally everything. It was an insane contest between two sides that really wanted it bad. Argentina came out on top, and I've got Myles here to discuss just how good that game was with me. Mate, try and sum up your reaction to that game before we talk about the detail, because it's been touted as like one of the best football games in history. Definitely one of the best World Cup finals in history. How did you see it, man?
For the way that it went down, it was the best game I've ever watched. And that's
Wow.
including a very high scoring draw between Villa and Nottingham Forest in the Championship a few seasons ago. So that took some beating. And it's funny because it's one of the best games I've ever watched. And the first 70 minutes of it were pretty dull. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not the first 70 minutes. There was a window between Argentina's second goal and France's first goal. That was pretty poor. But, oh my word, like you can't ask for more in a
No.
final than what we got, really. There was some amazing individual performances. Both teams had moments where they looked like the team worthy of winning the whole tournament.
Definitely.
Drama, penalties. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was a really good occasion, and it was just nice that the football is what we took away from it. It wasn't
Yeah.
a silly refereeing decision or a red card or anything. We just enjoyed 120 minutes of really two great teams going
Wicked.
at each other. It was fantastic.
It was, the ref, for the record, was brilliant. I thought he let the game
Mm.
flow really well. But it'll be remembered rightly as the contest between Lionel Messi and his swan song, it seems, for Argentina, and Kylian Mbappé, who were both, as we'd hoped, just tremendous, weren't they, in this game? Dragged their teams through, kept pulling punches when we thought they were out for the count. And it was a bit like a boxing match in the last round. It was a real slugfest and so entertaining to watch. But like you say, for the first, hour, 70 minutes, it was just all Argentina. So let's try and discuss kind of what happened from an Argentina perspective. What were they doing that kind of put France on the back burner quite a lot? And what weren't France doing as well?
Well, Argentina were pressing intensely, and it just meant that every single time France got the ball, they gave it away really cheaply. A lot of their players looked incredibly leggy, and obviously there's a lot
True.
of talk about this illness that was going around the French camp and who might have been affected and who that kind of they rushed back for the final because that's the problem with tournament football when it comes around
Yeah.
so quick. And France, let's not forget, have already been massively plagued by injuries. They couldn't afford to rest players who had this illness. Now, you and I both know if you're ever ill, the last thing you want to do is then go run around 90 minutes a few days later. And this is the biggest game on in world football. So that was a hard occasion for France to get used to. And Argentina seemed to attack that. They had intensity that I've not seen Argentina have before. The way their
Yeah.
midfield and their forward line pressed was incredible. Now, obviously, you're doing that with Messi, who, let's be honest, for all of his amazing qualities, and we saw most of them in this game, he's not someone that presses high. He's not there for his defensive attributes. And Di Maria, who's barely played this season, but both of them
Mm.
going forward were unstoppable. Di Maria in particular, my word, like that
Yeah.
is how you want to come back from an injury and how you want to leave your mark on a tournament. Argentina
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
caught France out with little things like that. I don't think you necessarily expected Di Maria in that game, but he got so much joy on that left hand side. And we talked about it when I hate to bring it back to it, but when France were playing England, we talked about it before the game. The things you wanted to target were France's fullbacks because
Yeah.
Kunde is not a fullback and Teo Hernandez is so attacking that you've got space behind him. Argentina exploited that
Mm.
mainly through Di Maria, who just hugged the touchline, cut inside at will, and just looked for those moments where he could isolate just himself against one of the defending players. That
Yeah.
worked for the first goal, where he got brought down by Dembele. It was cheap, but you knew what he was going to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You knew what he was trying to do, and it worked incredibly well. And for his goal, he took his goal incredibly well, and it was really, really deserved. It was nice to see how emotional he was about that game as a whole as well. Like it really meant something to him. It's his last appearance for Argentina, and he's
Mm.
definitely had a hand in them winning the biggest trophy there is. So yeah, it just seemed that Argentina were better organised. I don't want to say they were more up for it. They just looked more capable of being
Yeah.
up for it in the first exchanges, and it took Deschamps being quite brave to bring them back
Definitely.
into the game, and Argentina didn't know what to do with that.
Well, that's the thing. They raced into a 2-0 lead within like 35, 40 minutes, I think it was. And it was a sucker punch, really, because, I mean, France have been too pragmatic for this World Cup, and they should have been caught out sooner. England definitely should have caught them out for sitting back too much and not taking the game to them and waiting for an opportunity. They couldn't do that with Argentina. Like you say, they were just relentless, weren't they? I'm stunned at how well Di Maria played as a winger. He was literally hugging the touchline, wasn't he? And I think when he went off on about 60, 70 minutes, something like that, it really changed the flow and the energy from Argentina and almost gave a bit of impetus back to France in some ways. But yeah, France found a way back through those substitutions, really, wasn't it? The energy that brought back to that quite leggy France team was really important in the turnaround, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny because that first 40 minutes, you wouldn't be you'd be excused from thinking that was the first group game because France just didn't look like they'd even started the tournament at that point. Players looked completely like they hadn't got any rhythm or any connection with each other. Griezmann, who'd been running the entire tournament, gave the ball away really cheaply. So did Theo Hernandez. Every time Theo Hernandez touched the ball, it was like he wanted to give it to an Argentina player. Dembele was exactly the same. They couldn't get Mbappé into the game. The thing is, with a player like Mbappé, because he's so devastating going forward, he doesn't drop back and pick the ball up for himself. He wants to stand on the last defender. So if you don't get him service, you don't know he's in the game. And France really needed to change that. And Deschamps obviously did that in the first half. 40 minutes in, making a double substitution. That could have been seen as one of two things. One, a panic, and if I don't do something, it's over. So I'm just going to throw my toys at the pram and blame Giroud and Dembele if we get battered and hook them now and make them look like the scapegoats. Or it could have been him actually going, look, I've been here before. I know what I need to do to get this right. And I think the second part of that proved to be right in the end because those first two changes were amazing. That worked really, really well for him. Gave him that intensity, gave him that press that Argentina had. But for me, the biggest change and the one that, well, there was two, obviously, and they came on at the same time. The second set of changes, when he brings on Kingsley Coman and Camavinga, that sorted them out. And it's so funny. My wife probably thinks Camavinga is my favourite footballer in the world because the entire game I was just screaming for him. It was so obvious. Get Camavinga on the pitch because Rabiot looked like he had no legs. Griezmann looked like he had no legs. They needed energy in the middle of the park. And actually, they ended up bringing him on mainly as some sort of left back. Like a free roaming left back.
I think so.
He covered left back defensively, but brought that energy into the middle and that youthful, exciting kind of flair that France really needed at that moment. I can't believe how young he is. He looked so assured. And then between him and Coman, they dragged France back into that game. And that was no mean feat, trust me.
Well, no, because I mean, trying to sum up how I was feeling at 2-0, it felt like literally a cakewalk from here on in for Argentina. I know that's never a given considering the occasion, but Mbappe was so far out of the game. I didn't hear his name mentioned for a long, long time. And it was only, like you say, when the substitutes came on for France before half time where there was enough energy in that final third to bring him back into the game. And that was the game plan, really. Giroud wasn't really in the game at all. Griezmann couldn't get the ball, I don't think. The midfield was just being controlled so well. And I think Argentina really stood out there for me. The whole middle of the park was impressive. Alexis McAllister was great. Just every single one of that midfield three for Argentina dominated possession.
Yeah.
And like you say, it needed to even up the numbers a bit. So when Argentina did that, the flow just changed back in their favour. And the first goal that France scored was a penalty that was a clear penalty as well. Like it was a clumsy challenge from Otamendi, wasn't it? Yeah. And he'd had a good tournament up to now, but he struggled in this game once France decided to actually show up in the last 10 minutes of the 90. And that penalty gave them a way back in. And you could just sense the momentum changing from then on, couldn't you, really?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the biggest thing that shifted the momentum was not long before France got their goals, Kingsley Coman took a really bad knock and was limping around the pitch. And I honestly thought they were going to have to substitute him back off again. And the fact that they didn't have to do that, he was so pivotal to the rest of the match. And like you say, France just seemed to get everything in order. And that first goal, Argentina didn't see it coming. And all of a sudden they had no plan B. Because they'd already taken off, like you say, they'd taken Di Maria off. They'd brought on essentially another left back to play left wing. So they should have been more defensively assured. And actually, they looked like they'd fallen asleep a little bit. And France were there. Yeah. And that's the problem. When you've got a team of that kind of quality, they will capitalise on those moments. And Mbappé in particular, my word, his second goal, the way he
Wow,
takes
yeah.
that is phenomenal. But here we are talking all about what France did and what France did right and what they did wrong. They lost. Argentina won, and actually deservedly won. But this game was so exciting. It's hard to, we've not even talked about the Argentina goals really, because it's
No.
so easy to go back and forth over it because it was that exciting.
Well, we'll talk about extra time in a moment, but the 90 or 95 or whatever ended up being was so action packed in that final 10, 15 minutes that it was just breathtaking, wasn't it? Because everybody was thinking there's 10 minutes for Argentina to hold out.
Mm-hmm.
Destiny awaits Leo Messi. He's the greatest player of all time. And all these things kind of been thought about. I reckon even the Argentina players got slightly swept up in that moment as well.
Mm.
So, yeah, sucker punch it definitely was to get that penalty, first of all. But then the equaliser was just the wind out of the sails completely for Argentina. I've never seen a team so grateful for the full-time whistle as Argentina were yesterday. It was just a desperate kind of let's get over the line, because France they were purring, weren't they? They finally sprung into life.
Yeah.
And from a neutral standpoint, I'm sure both sets of fans for each team were absolutely hating the way this was playing out. But for us, it was just amazing to watch, wasn't it? Argentina's goals then, let's go back to the first half.
Yeah.
So the penalty for Messi, first of all, was clear. But if we talk about the Di Maria goal and the build-up to it and the counter that Argentina were doing, it's beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, to me, that might be my goal of the tournament. I just think it was
Yeah.
so well executed. The little touch around the corner from Messi was fantastic. McAllister does so well to bring the ball forward and plays the pass to Di Maria absolutely perfectly. And if you remember, not long before that, Di Maria had a chance that he blazed over the bar because it bobbled up towards him.
Yeah.
And it was almost like he had a second chance and he knew exactly how to place it. He actually bounced the ball into the ground and over Lloris, which was just, it was a beautiful finish. And Di Maria really deserves that. Di Maria is someone who's always been someone who can show up in a final. We've seen him do it for Real Madrid time and time again. And to finish his international career with that goal is just massive for him.
Yeah.
And it's funny how little we've really mentioned Messi so far, because in that first 20, 25 minutes in particular, you could see he was ready to turn up in that match. The penalty, for example, that's the one thing you could maybe criticize Messi for in his career. I think going into the World
Yeah.
Cup, I think he'd missed like 28% of his penalties or something ridiculous, which is a very high figure for a player of his quality. And he took that
Yeah.
penalty with the calmness of a madman to me, because if you're able to be that calm in that kind of pressurized situation, there's something wrong with you. I think Lloris might have made it slightly easy for him, because with both of Messi's penalties, this one and the one in the shootout, Lloris telegraphed which way he was going to dive and just allowed Messi to roll it to the other side. But it takes some courage to stand up the goalkeeper and do that, doesn't it? And it was just phenomenal.
Yeah. Going into extra time as well, it was at that point I didn't know which way the game was going to go, because the momentum had swung to France. Argentina got the respite they desperately needed by the final whistle blowing and kind of gathered themselves a little bit. And you can imagine what was said in the circle when they were gathering again to kind of galvanise themselves for extra time. Messi must have been like, come on, this is now or never. Di Maria must have been thinking the same. Di Maria was on the bench in tears for most of extra time, wasn't he? Just on the edge of his seat, as we all were. But extra time was just something else, wasn't it? Like, just when you thought it couldn't get any more extraordinary, that goal from Messi that was allowed by VAR because I think Varane's bum kept him onside when the ball was played. Just because he had such a big backside, it was onside. And then it crossed the line as well from the deflection, and everyone went mental. And even then you're thinking, that's got to be it. There can't be any more. But no, another penalty for a handball. Mbappé steps up for his second penalty of the game, and then obviously went on to take one in the shootout. Absolute ice in the man's veins. I don't know how he put that penalty away in the same place as well, with what looked like no fear at all. Incredible.
Yeah, it was brilliant extra time. Before the game, I mean, you can go back and look at our last pod to see this. Dave and I talked about what we thought, and I said, I reckon 2-2, and then France will take it in extra time. And then going into extra time, Argentina started throwing punches, and I thought, I think I'm going to miss this on the last hurdle. And they were brilliant. And I think it came down to eventually they managed to make some substitutions, because I was really surprised. It was very Southgate-esque how long it took Argentina to realise they needed to get a foothold in the game again and change things up. because the intensity that the midfield and the forward line brought in the first half, I think it knackered them by the end. And obviously the morale dropped as well, because you'd seen it with the Netherlands when they were 2-0 up against the Netherlands, and they let that one come back as well. There was shades of that happening again, and it being a real problem for them. And then some fresh legs made all the difference. I don't know why Dybala doesn't come on sooner. Obviously, they bring on Lautaro Martinez, who actually, his finishing was woeful, but played very, very well, and actually was a nuisance to what was left of the France defence by that point. And
he got in the right positions, didn't he? But like you say, it was just finishing for him.
But it was enough because it led to the goal. His work led to the goal, and he was really, really pivotal in Messi's second goal. So I think he can still hold his head up high with what he did in the final. Probably should have won it for him, but hey ho. And once they did that and made those changes, then they looked a lot more comfortable in extra time. And it was just back and forth, back and forth. But the biggest moment in extra time has to have come from Emi Martinez. That save right at the death in the biggest game of his career. Bear in mind the career he's had, where it's only been the last couple of seasons where he's been at the top end of football, really. And now all of a sudden, he's won the Copa America for Argentina. He's helped them get over the line in a World Cup in a massive way as well. Not in a passive way where you see sometimes you can question how good is Edison for Man City, for example, because how much does he really have to do? Martinez did a lot for Argentina in both of the tournaments that they've won now. And that save right at the death, that has to go down as one of the greatest moments for any goalkeeper in World Cup history.
Class.
Surely.
Yeah. Well, not only just world class, but the timing of it, the psychological impact that had on the game for him, because obviously he went into that shootout then feeling like an absolute beast. And he's great. he is great at shootouts anyway, But that psychological edge from the save must have made him feel like invincible. And then into the shootout itself, I felt so bad that both Mbappe and Messi were taking the first penalties, because if either of them missed, you'd have felt horrendous, because they deserved to score. And again, ice in Mbappe's veins. But what about Messi's penalty to open it? Rolls it down the middle, doesn't even put much power behind it, and just goes, and what? So that was incredible, first of all. But then the misses for France, really, they're heartbreaking, really, because we've seen that happen to our bright talents. And it reminded me a lot of Bukayo Saka, didn't it, for you last year with Chouameni's miss. He'll bounce back, though, surely, because he's had a great tournament as well.
Yeah, he really has. And his goal against England was a massive moment for him. So hopefully he'll be able to hold on to that and think about, this won't be his last World Cup for France by any means. He'll be pivotal to that midfield come the next tournament as well, because obviously they are going to have to move on from Pogba and Kante, and they showed it in this tournament how effectively they can do that. I mean, Griezmann's not going to be at the next World Cup, you'd imagine, as well. So that midfield looks like it's in safe hands with Tchouaméni and Camavinga. So hopefully they can bounce back from that moment. Already, sadly, there's been instances of abuse online, and I think Tchouaméni and one other, I think it might be Coman, have deleted their Instagram accounts, which is so sad to see. And when you think about the representation of that France team as well, Lloris was the only person on the pitch by the end of the game who was white. And that team have that diversity, have carried them through a tournament where they've won the World Cup, have then got them that close as well. And I hate that it's even a thought. Again, it's not just England fans, it's within football, that this horrible notion of not celebrating your country's diversity, but blaming it, which is just ludicrous. Particularly when you consider how wonderful they've been in that tournament. To give them any sort of stick, even on a footballing level, would be ridiculous. And to bring it back to that is so sad to see. And sad for anyone to miss a penalty in that pivotal moment. The only solace that they'll take is obviously they were world champions 4 years ago, and a lot of those players have the trophy to their name. And there did seem mutual respect in this game, a lot more than we've seen with Argentina and the Dutch, for example. There did seem to be quite an understanding of whoever wins this, wins this. There was a lot more grace about the final, other than maybe Emi Martinez's antics. But you've got to love them, surely. He was magnificent in the shootout, wasn't he?
To be honest, the way he played and the way that result came about and the influence he had, I don't blame him, because I'd be over the moon as well. And in the moment, especially when he receives the Golden Glove for best goalkeeper of the tournament.
It was brilliant.
The reactions that got as well from the Qataris watching on, he didn't care though, did he? He was absolutely in dreamland, and rightly so. But I wasn't sure whether he'd get goalkeeper of the tournament before the final. But that performance, there's no other candidate really. Livakovic obviously had a great tournament. Lloris himself did as well, but Martinez is just probably one of the best 5 goalkeepers in the world quite comfortably now, isn't he?
Yeah, I'll put him top 3. I think behind the 2
Really?
Brazilian goalkeepers, I don't think there's a goalkeeper better than Emi Martinez right now. There's no one I would rather have at my club. I just hope he stays there for a
I
while
know.
because honestly, he's just proven time and time again what he's capable of. And I
Yeah.
hope that rather than him having to go elsewhere to find club trophies now, Villa invest enough around him and make him that kind of focal point. He's captain now. He's won the 2 biggest trophies an Argentinian could possibly win, really. So I hope that he's just willing to give that time to the club that gave him the platform now. He's phenomenal. I mean, I think he was the best goalkeeper at the tournament, but you do see this very often where the awards have to be given to players that were in the final because then they're there for the celebrations and the photos. Like Enzo Fernandez, for example, great tournament. I've got him in my team of the tournament. I think he's fantastic. Do I think he was the best young player at this tournament, or do I think he was the best one available for the photo opportunity at the end? Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's tight. He was great though. He was. That's not a criticism of him.
Then you've got strange photo ops, like obviously Mbappe had to come and get his golden boot, which is always really awkward. And I think Messi did it in 2014 when he got player of the tournament, but they lost to
Germany.
2014. Germany, nearly forgot. But incredible performance from Fernandes. I think he does deserve his platform now, and he's one of the standout breakout stars of this tournament, isn't he? So fair play to him. But let's just have a word on Lionel Messi if we can, because like you say, we've not really talked about him as much as we could have done and should have done so far. But his influence on this tournament for Argentina is Maradona-esque. This was hinging on his galvanising the team and his quality when it really needed to be shown, because Argentina weren't great up until maybe the quarterfinals. You know, they had a tough group stage, just tough start to the group stage, as we know, losing to Saudi Arabia, let's not forget. So this is Messi's tournament. He scored in every single round, including the group stage, the first player to do so. And before this tournament, he hadn't scored a knockout goal in a World Cup either. So this was his moment, and he seized it with both hands, and he deserves to lift that trophy. And I think for most fans, the vast majority of fans around the world, unless you're French, watch Messi lifting that trophy and just think, this is like the perfect story. He's completed football.
Yeah, it felt like that, didn't it? And do you know what? Off the back of a lot of incredible performances, I think if you think about the semi-final in particular, he was marvellous in that game. I actually thought he was better in that game than he was in the final. Not to criticise what he did in the final, but there was a period, like we say, after Argentina went 2-0 up, you kind of forgot he was on the pitch until he gets his second goal in extra time. And that's okay, because in a final, that's what the big players are there for, moments. Mbappe was the same. You forgot Mbappe was on the pitch until his moments, and that's what they're capable of. And he carried them over the line. That's not to say that the rest of Argentina's team weren't contributing massively, because actually they also seemed to carry him too, and that was a really cohesive unit. They really wanted it for the country, but particularly for Messi. It did feel like they were winning it for him rather than themselves. A lot of those players will come again. Like Julian Alvarez, that's not the last we've seen of him at the World Cup, but it is the last we'll see of Messi. So it was really that kind of, can we take this opportunity to cement the legacy of someone who has done so much for football? There was this beautiful moment before the game where this Argentinian journalist said to him, no matter what the result of the final is, what you have done for Argentina, for us back home, and the kids who have grown up watching you, the inspiration you've been, that's the prize, that's the trophy, you've helped them win. And I just thought that was such a wonderful way of putting it. And to crown it off with this final victory, it's magic for him. Absolutely amazing moment and thoroughly deserved. I mean, he wound me up a little bit in the quarterfinals, but what can you say? He's a phenomenal footballer, and
a crowning glory for a fantastic career. I mean, there are rumours it might not be his final Argentina game, but I think he can't top this. So why would you continue? And I really do hope he preserves this legacy now by going, I've done all I can. Let's keep it like it is.
He says he says he wants to play as the world champion, and I think I understand that because I imagine what he means by that is he wants to go back and play football in Argentina for his country in front of
Right.
his fans. And I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. If it comes to Copa America qualification, he can have a home game in front of his fans with the world champions. Yeah, that would be a very
Oh, well,
special thing.
they'll have a massive parade back in
Of
Buenos Aires,
course.
surely. I mean,
Oh,
do
the
you need to
scenes there
play another
yesterday.
game after that? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
insane, wasn't it? So he will get the hero's welcome he craves, and rightly so. I don't think he needs another game or however many games to prove anything to anyone. He's done it now. He's completed football, like I said, and
Mm,
I think this legacy he leaves for fans across generations. Because I mean, we watched him a lot younger than we are now. My kids are only young, and they've just watched him and just gone, "Wow, this guy is incredible."
mm,
At 35 years old, is producing not just performances like that one, but a
mm,
tournament like that. So he stands for so much, I think, that's good about football. So it's just nice to see that kind of courage, that kind of heroism, that loyalty, that natural talent, because
mm.
he's such a gifted guy, rewarded in this way. And yeah, seeing him lift the trophy, we'd envisaged it, hadn't we, so many times because he's won every other trophy there is to possibly win. So yeah, fair play to him. It's a lovely story and nice way to go out.
Yeah, we did envisage it, but there were moments in this tournament where it looked like it was going to end horribly. Like you
Yeah,
mentioned earlier, when they lost that first group game, they were one result away from getting knocked out. Like every single game, I think I saw it really nicely put that every single game for Argentina has been a knockout game since the first game, really.
I
So
guess
it's
so.
it's it's been easier for them to build the momentum, it felt like, and they really grew into the tournament. It seemed like
Yeah,
every performance was their best one since the last one. Like they improved every single round, and you hear that very often that the team that best grows into a tournament is often the one that wins it rather than the team that starts the best. And they really embodied that here, and he was a massive part of that. It looked
yeah,
like he got a wake up call in that Saudi Arabia game. He was just ready to try and carry them through wherever possible. And the
yeah.
changes that Argentina made to accommodate that, particularly bringing in Julian Alvarez, I thought that won them the tournament. Really, it's such a shame because I love Lautaro Martinez, but he's had a shocking tournament. Really, I'm glad he had his moment in the penalty shootout against the Netherlands. He took the winning penalty, and I
Yeah.
hope that's again the moment he takes from it. But all in all, Julian Alvarez is stuck. Messi must be happy leaving it in his hands because he just looked fantastic, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and it's insane to think that he might be a sub for Manchester City from here on in.
Yeah.
But those kind of performances, he has to play a more pivotal role. He's had a good start to his
Mm,
career at Man City, to be fair,
yeah.
in his kind of role from the sidelines and as a substitute. But yeah, he's definitely one to watch. However, I think between the two teams we've just seen, Argentina and France, it very much felt like now or never for Argentina. In some ways, they had to win it now
Hmm.
with this cycle of players and with Messi in kind of the end of his career.
Mm,
Whereas with France, you do feel like they've got plenty more shots at
yeah.
success like this, don't you? So as gutted as they'll be, I think Argentina would have been more gutted in defeat because where do they go after this? They've not got any megastars, I don't think, Argentina necessarily. Whereas France, as you've pointed
Mm,
out, their whole midfield looks ready to take on the mantle left behind by the likes of Pogba, who we don't know is going to reach his best again. Rabiot wasn't really top class, was he? Kante might not get a look in again, but
mm.
Tchouaméni looks fantastic, doesn't he? Really, really positive step for them. Amongst others, there are so many
Yeah.
young names in that France team.
That's across the whole pitch as well. Like, if you look at that France side that's just played that game, there are a few names that we won't see at World Cups again. You imagine we won't see Lloris again, but they've got
True.
Mike Maignan at AC Milan, who, when he's fit, he'll be France's number one now, and I think he's 27. So next World Cup, he's going to be at the peak of his powers, you would imagine. Teo
Yeah.
Hernandez is young, Upamecano's still young. You might not see Varane at the next World Cup, but the way that Kanate came in, he looked absolutely fantastic, didn't he? So
Yeah, he
that's
did.
that problem solved. If Jules Koundé continues at right back, he's going to play there for years and years.
Yeah.
Fofana in midfield alongside Camavinga and Tchouaméni, amazing young players. And Mbappe, of course, 23 years old,
Mad.
12 World Cup goals now. So what is that, four behind Miroslav Klose for the
At
record? And he's
23.
23.
Yeah.
And conceivably, he'll play the next World Cup, 27. The one after that, 31. With his talent, will he play the one where he's 35? So he could have three more World Cups.
Yeah.
Like that's just phenomenal. A hat trick in the final. He's already lifted the trophy once, and he was the young player of the tournament for that one as well. His golden boot here, you could have argued he was the player of the tournament in this World Cup too. If it
If
hadn't been
France
for
had have
Argentina
won,
winning it. Yeah,
yeah, that's it.
it's amazing. And that's just some of France's squad as well. There are
Mm.
plenty of players missing. Like, if you think about who's
Yeah,
missed this tournament through injury, Kimpembe, Nkunku, Benzema, it's Kante, Pogba, it's mental. I was thinking about this a lot, and I hate to again just keep bringing it back to England, but when you look back over the last couple of Premier League seasons, Liverpool, you could say, are one of the best Premier League sides we've had in Premier League history, but only have one Premier League title because they happen to
yeah,
have come at the same time as Pep Guardiola's Man City. And it's just so
yeah.
unfortunate. We could find that with England. That England have this amazing generation where it feels like England really should win a trophy, really, but they just come at the same time as this amazing French generation, and it's just going to be hard to top that, really.
Well, you say that, and Brazil as well have got a very young generation of players as well. So it might
Yeah,
be quite a tussle in the next few World Cups, really,
yeah.
to see who comes out on top.
And
But yeah,
Argentina,
interesting.
Argentina have got some great players still coming through as well. Like we talked about Enzo Fernandez. He's very, very young. I think, what is he, 20, 22? They've also got
He's
Lissandro
21.
Martinez to come in and replace Otamendi. Romero's not old by any stretch of the imagination. He'll be at the next World Cup. They've got players that will stick around. So and
Yeah,
Lautaro Martinez up front, he will come good. And he's still only, I think, 24. Obviously, Julian Alvarez. There's some great
yeah,
talent around, and it seems quite well distributed all of a sudden. Like, even nations like Norway have got a couple of like world class footballers.
yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be really interesting to see what the next couple of World Cups look like, where we don't have, like we had with Spain, this era of dominance anymore, because there is teams that can compete. I'm excited by that.
Yeah, it's been an incredible tournament from a football perspective,
Yeah.
albeit being super strange, being the timing of the year it's in, and being in Qatar as well will never not be weird. And I think the way in the trophy presentation they almost tried to commandeer the trophy lift
Mm.
was a bit odd. There's been a lot said about that, but I think we'll probably have to do a whole other pod about this World Cup from a Qatar perspective and how we feel about it now it's been and gone. But from a purely football perspective, I've loved it. I think we definitely need to digest it in more detail
Yeah.
after the fact and look back at some of the highlights. But for you and for this game, best World Cup final ever?
It's definitely the best World Cup final I've watched. I mean, I'm only 28, so there's only so many I can comment on. But yeah, for me, that there's nothing that stands out. And as a tournament, I think it was fantastic. There,
Yeah,
there are obvious issues around its location, and like you say, it's worth us talking about that in a bit more detail. But for all it's worth, by everyone's account, the tournament has run incredibly smoothly, considering the size of the
yeah,
country. That was always considered to be an issue. They've dealt with that very well. Everyone's accounts are that the Qatari people were wonderful and very hospitable and inviting, which is really nice to see. There's obviously a lot that goes with that. And I think it's important that you separate the two things: the issues with how Qatar is ruled and how the rights of people there are affected, and the everyday citizens of Qatar and the Middle Eastern world who will have just really appreciated having their opportunity to have a tournament. Because when you see the fans of those nations and Morocco and what it means to them,
yeah, yeah,
that is a phenomenal thing. The sad part of it is when that's used to almost cover up and hide a lot of problems that exist. And
yeah,
having Messi lifting the trophy in those terms is obviously divided a lot of opinion. It's I don't know, but
yeah.
for the football of it, outstanding. Yeah, and as
I agree.
a whole tournament, I think the standard of football has been excellent, and
It has.
we had everything we could have wanted. Dark horses,
Yeah,
big teams getting knocked out, Messi's journey, and Mbappe continuing to compete. England, I thought, were excellent. It's as good a
yeah.
World Cup as I can remember.
Yeah, it's a nice way to end the pod, actually, because next time we talk, it will be on the back of some Carabao Cup games and a scrappy
Great.
Boxing Day slog in the Premier League. So, yeah, back down to reality with the crash. But, yeah, we'll definitely backtrack, I think, and talk about this World Cup in some more detail, probably highlight our highlights of the tournament itself and mark kind of things that really stood out for us. Until then, mate, thank you for sharing this amazing World Cup with us. I wish Dave
Yeah,
was here as well because it's been great to hear your take on it. Looking forward to the Premier League.
I am actually. It will be nice to have Villa back. Obviously, we went out just as we got a new manager in, the January transfer windows come in, so it feels quite an exciting time for the Premier League. But it will take me some time to get my head around club football being back. To be honest, it's a weird.
Definitely.
We've never had this, and I'm really interested to see what the standard of football will be like how knackered everyone will
Yeah.
be.
Well, it'll be a mix. There'll be a few players that haven't played at all. So you can obviously imagine Haaland's waiting in the wings, relishing his
Oh,
comeback.
please tell me you saw the video that they put
I
out of
did.
him. That was
That's
excellent.
what I'm
That was
referring to.
really, really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it was good on City's part to kind of put something like that out there. It's a bit of
Yeah.
light relief. But to all our new subscribers who have joined us since the World Cup has started, welcome and thank you so much for joining us on our journey. Hope to see you again in future pods that are going to be a lot more Premier League focused. Please do leave comments if you want to get your sort of comments and opinions out there as well. We'd love to hear from you all. But yeah, World Cup's over. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks, Myles. See you soon.
Thanks, Mike. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.